I went to see a GP and he said to me, you got a few options. I would recommend you consider antidepressants, you take a semester off or consider changing degrees, or maybe you could try taking up running. And I did take a semester off and transferred, but I also took up running, and that has been the greatest gift.
That was Jess Baird Walsh, a leader in AI and innovation, a startup founder, and the woman behind one of Australia's longest running streaks. Today, Jess shares how a 30-day challenge became a life-changing practice, what it's taught her about resilience and purpose, and why she's now running every day to raise $1 million for the Indigenous Marathon Foundation. I am Jason Hunt. This is Execs Who Run, the show on life, leadership, and the miles in between. Now, let's dive in. Welcome along to the show. Jess, how are we doing?
Great. Thank you, Jason. Great to see you, and thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. I'm looking forward to this one. We start these conversations off the same way every time, and I usually ask a very obvious question around what was your most memorable recent run, but I kind of already know what the answer to that is. So tell me about Sydney Marathon.
Yeah, well, we're recording this on a Wednesday night, and Sydney Marathon was just a few days ago, and I have to say it was a fantastic day for running in Australia, but also just for our city to be able to welcome so many people from around the globe to something so positive was really, really special. After weeks and weeks of rain, we had a beautiful, sunny last day of winter, and just incredible vibe out on the course. Lots of international support, and obviously lots of people supporting family and friends locally here in Australia. So yeah, just overall a really, really special day to be a runner.
It was pretty cool, wasn't it? And yeah, I think of all the races that I've been to since I've been in Australia, from a weather point of view, I've not seen a better day. It was spectacular, wasn't it? Like nice and cool, but nice blue skies.
Yeah.
How could you ask for more, right?
Yeah, it was absolutely perfect. Not too humid, perfect blue sky, not too hot, not too cold. And yeah, just a fantastic day in all. And I think whether you were running or spectating, it was really hard not to get caught up in the excitement and the energy in the air. And all of that energy was incredibly positive. I've actually had quite a few friends reach out to me who are non-runners, having been in the crowd, and tell me that they would love to take up running with a goal to running it next year. So I think that's exactly what we want to see with those sorts of events, is people to see how positive and powerful it can be.
Yeah, that's so cool. That is the goal of these things, right? Try and get more people running, which is cool. But how did your run go?
Yeah, really well. I was, for the first time since I've been running marathons, and this was my fourth road marathon, and I've run a few 50K events as well, was the first time I was really targeting a time, and I had a 10-minute time window. The 3:30 was my goal target, my sort of AA dream target. I thought I was probably better conditioned for a 3:40, and I ended up running a 3:35 right in the middle. So it was a 13-minute PB, pretty hilly course. And look, I'll probably try to better that next year or in the next one that I do, but, can't complain, and really enjoyed the run.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a tough course. I mean, it even got the best of the greatest marathoner of all time in Kipchoge. It was quite funny. I was out spectating, and I was at the entrance to Centennial Park, so I saw him go in with a group and then come out by himself. It's like, don't worry, Kipchoge, Centennial gets the best of us at times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was such I guess another really positive part of the week was having that sort of representation from elite runners and having them be so present in the running community and so accessible. I know both Sifan Hassan and Kipchoge were out running in Centennial Park a few mornings, and very happy to stop and chat and take photos. And that was really nice, really great to see such a positive reaction from, I think they were welcomed by the Australian running community with absolute open arms and enthusiasm, and they returned that in kind. So overall, really, really positive.
It's incredible, right? We don't get that kind of thing down here very often, and yeah, it's got to be there's some of the biggest athletes in the world, and in any sport we don't really get that down in Australia very often, right? So it is a pretty special moment for running, but I guess sport in Australia more generally.
Yeah, there was, I'm not sure if you saw on the socials afterwards, but after Hassan won the women's marathon, she went with the women from the Sydney Muslim Run Club out to have ice cream. They bought her ice cream and they all sort of celebrated together. And that was another, just, not to go on about how, wonderful and positive it was, but, so great. That's a relatively new run club. I know Jasmine, one of the founders of that. And, it's been incredible to see the way she's brought such a powerful community of Muslim runners together, male and female, and to see them have that moment with her in a small group setting was just so beautiful. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty special. It's very cool. And yeah, as you say, I think the way that they engaged with the community more broadly was pretty cool to see. Pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
We're going to get back to the running because that's kind of what we talk about a fair bit here. But I want to dive into a little bit about you and your kind of background and your professional career. And, it always will ultimately intertwine with the running eventually. But tell me a little bit about the background of Jess.
Yeah, so I've had a very diverse career and a very, diverse personal life as well. Had the opportunity to live in quite a few different countries and have had the opportunity to work in a range of different organizations, spanning from media in my early career and not-for-profit. I spent 3 years working at Amnesty International. And after that, I went into startups. So have run my own business a couple of times, as well as leaning into technology startups, and have both run and operated in startups, raised venture capital a few years ago, and am now leading an AI and innovation function for a large professional services organization. So incredibly diverse, and have been blessed to have a number of different facets to my career to date, which has been really positive and I think has set me up well for a very interesting sort of second half of my career going into the next stage.
There's quite a pivot in there, I guess, from kind of the media world and the non-profit world into startups and venture and I guess what you're doing now. What was the kind of defining moment that switch came from?
So for me, I think I've reflected on this a lot over the last couple of years. And for me, it's actually been a question of trying to balance three things. And probably if I step back from that, it's probably true for quite a lot of us. I've been looking for work that's intellectually stimulating. I've been looking for work that's commercially interesting and feels like it's, really relevant in the world. But I also have been driven by a strong sense of wanting to work with purpose and wanting to do work that I find to be meaningful. So if I look back, hindsight's 2020, and if I look back throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to experience all of those things, purpose in my 3 years at Amnesty International, in different stages, deep purpose through seeking to build something of my own, and other things that have been more sort of commercially interesting, but maybe not as heart-led. And I think that's been an exploration to try to find the right balance for me of those three things. And it's been a bit of an evolution, but I'm really happy with where I am now, which is actually balancing a lot of, the commercially challenging and interesting and intellectually stimulating in my day job, and then doing a lot of purpose-led work in some fundraising that I'm doing, which is associated with my running.
It's perfect segue for me. You've given it to me straight away, which is always nice when I don't have to do the heavy lifting of the segue. But the thing I find most interesting about people's running stories is their running origin. So what was it for you that got you running in the first place, or how did running become a thing for you?
I was always a very active kid. I grew up on a farm, but I was never sporty in the traditional sense. I never played team sports. I never did little athletics. I never did running at school. And I actually got into trouble when I was in year 7 and got suspended on the athletics carnival. And the next year I was in year 8 and we came to cross country day. I thought, I'm just going to apply myself. I'm going to see what happens. And I ran the whole course against everyone's expectations and qualified for zone. And as much as that is just a bit of a funny anecdote, I think there was something quite profound for me in that experience of doing something that I didn't think I would be naturally well suited for. And I never thought of myself as a runner. I didn't end up training for zone. I didn't end up knocking it out of the park, but it did stay with me, that idea of trying to do something hard, doing it, and then exceeding your own expectations. So I think there was a kernel of that in there for me. Fast forward a few years, I moved to Sydney and I was doing arts law at Sydney University, but it wasn't well suited to me. The environment wasn't well suited to me. I'd moved from regional Australia and it just wasn't working. And I actually got quite depressed, and I went to see a GP and he said to me, you got a few options. I would recommend you consider antidepressants. You take a semester off or consider changing degrees, or maybe you could try taking up running. And I did take a semester off and transferred and, finished a great degree at UTS. But I also took up running, and that has been the greatest gift. I've actually been thinking lately if I can try to find that doctor. And, I never saw him again, but it was such an incredible gift that he has given me of having running as a tool. And I've had that since I was 18, a tool that I can rely on when I'm going through tough times. Obviously, it's given me so many great and positive experiences, but running has definitely been my absolute greatest teacher in life. And the resilience I've built through running, particularly over the last 4 or 5 years, but since I was 18, has been such an incredible gift. So yeah, that's the backstory of how I started running. I, then ran sporadically. I was probably 25 when I ran my first half marathon. Then I had a few years of running sporadically with kids. And then around 2017, locked in for my first marathon, which I ran in Madrid in 2018, and have been running very consistently since 2017.
I want to ask, at a very dark point in your life and you get this gift of running, what was it about running that enabled that change for you? Why did you connect to it so much?
I think, well, for me, I think, and it continues to be this, it's a way to get out of my head and very much into my body. For me, the experience of running is very much an experience that other people describe, that flow state and the mental clarity that they get when they meditate. And for me, both of those things are true in running. I both get into a flow state, despite the fact that I'm not a super fast runner. I don't have a great running action or style. I get into a really great flow state, and I do a lot of running on my own. Of course, I love running socially as well, but I do a lot of running on my own. And I really find that I do a lot of higher order thinking and a lot of subconscious processing of, whether that be things that are happening at work, things that are happening personally. It just helps me to get outside of my head and into my body. And that has been absolutely transformative for me throughout my life.
That's amazing. So you get into running a bit more in 2017 and you start to be doing events and races and whatnot. Then in 2022, you decide to start something a little bit crazy, I guess. Well, actually, no, it didn't start crazy, did it? Tell me about how you deciding that you were going to run every day for 30 days turned into, what are we at now? Day 1,160 something?
Yeah, today's day 1,100. Sorry, today's day 1,158. So
58,
yeah, it started as a 30-day goal, and you could say it's gotten a little out of hand.
just a little.
Yeah.
Okay. Firstly, why the 30-day challenge, and then why didn't you stop?
So the 30-day challenge started after I'd made the very difficult decision to leave a startup that I had raised venture for. It was at the time, and it still is with benefit of hindsight, absolutely the right decision. And I maintain a great relationship with those investors, but there wasn't a path forward for us as a team. And so I made the decision to leave. But raising venture as any startup founder in a pre-product, pre-revenue business is really, really hard. As a female CEO of a business at that stage, it is almost impossible to raise capital. And so I really felt making the decision to leave after 2 years after raising that money, that I'd let down not only my team, not only my family, not only the investors, but I really felt like I'd let the team down because I was a female founder that had successfully raised this money, had the backing of some fantastic venture investors and some great strategic angels. And I made the really difficult decision to leave. And so again, I found myself in a really difficult spot personally. And when I was interrogating that decision and thinking about that, I realized that I had to make the right decision for me personally, not make the right decision for my investors, for my family, for my co-founders. And part of that reflection was that I needed a practice to prove to myself that I could be accountable to myself for something that was just for me and not for anyone else. And I guess running was something that I knew. And so I made the decision at that stage to start a practice of running 5 kilometers a day for 30 days. And I had all intentions of finishing after 30 days. But when the 30-day mark came around, already I could feel the profound nature of the change that was happening within me. And I just knew that I wasn't ready to stop. So I then decided, well, let's see if we can keep it going. I didn't tell anyone. I just thought to myself, I probably can't keep going for a year, so I won't tell anyone, but I'll just see if I can do 5Ks a day, the 365 days. I ended up in a new job, and on one of the calls in front of the whole team, my boss asked me how long I was going to go for, and I just blurted out, I'm going to do it every day for a year. So then I was publicly accountable, and by the time I got to a year, there was no stopping me. And I think it wasn't really until, not long after I passed 2 years that I gave myself credit for having achieved the personal why, for setting out on that personal accountability mission. By the time I'd reached 2 years, my personal why, I big tick to the personal goal. And that's when I started thinking about, if I'm going to continue, why am I going to continue? What are the reasons for that? And that's led me into the next phase of the running journey. But that's how it started. It started innocently as a 5Ks a day for 30 days, just as something that I was doing for myself.
It's very cool. And I like I guess that accountability aspect and something for you. It's a common thing actually, speaking to people about this topic, that running is the thing for them, and it's not necessarily always about accountability and whatnot, but it's their time, it's their thing, and the way that you've taken that and brought it into something to kind of build that sense of accountability for you is very cool. And we will get to where it's gone now and some other bits and pieces. But what I want to start kind of do is I want to dive a bit deeper into this more broadly, right? Where 1,158, did I get it right this time? Yeah. Days in, and put aside the fact that it's running. It's just pretty incredible that you've done something every day for that long, right? There's a lot of learnings that will come out of that. So I want to unpick a few different areas to try and understand, I guess, what you've learned over that period and how your expectations have shifted and some of the deeper pieces to that. But I want to start at the kind of more tactical end of running, right? Any runner will know trying to run every day for a month, let alone 6 months, let alone a year, let alone, my math isn't that great, but it must be 4.5 years or something like that now, is bloody hard. So how have you managed that, and what have you kind of learnt about your body as a runner over that period?
So I guess there's a little bit to unpack there. So yes, just over 3 years. So in July it was
3 years. My math was terrible.
We put you on the spot with the calculation, but yeah, 3 years. Um, One of the questions I get asked, probably the question I get asked most when I'm talking to people is, how do you stay uninjured? And have I guess all the things that you have to run through when you run that many days consecutively. But I definitely have learned from a sort of tactical and, base building perspective, how powerful it is to do the majority of your runs slowly, particularly if you're just getting started or if you're increasing volume. Building a really strong aerobic base and training with a relatively low heart rate in the majority of your runs is a really powerful way to get the consistency, get the kilometers in your legs, get used to it without burning out. So that's been a really important part of it for me. Because I did that, pretty much for the first 2 years, I focused on very slow running. I wasn't doing huge mileage. And so, that has been critical. As I've increased the mileage and started to add speed work in there, obviously strength training again is really critical, and having versatility in the programming. So I am working with a coach now, and I've obviously know that your other guests have, talked about all sorts of cool things about ChatGPT and AI coaches. And I work in AI, and so I'm sure I could get a great program from a coach. From ChatGPT or another AI program. But I really love the accountability of having a person that I can sort of share with and bounce ideas off, and have that kind of human connection. And that has been quite powerful for me in helping to push my limits. I think having the combination now of having a really solid base, a really strong commitment to strength training 2 or 3 times a week, and then having the support to incorporate speed work and other types of training, as well as dedicated training blocks for particular types of races. That's been a great combination. I think if I tried to do a lot of speed work from the beginning, it would have been much more difficult to stay uninjured. And I definitely, in terms of my body, I have definitely worked out above about 80 Ks a week is when my body starts to feel a bit stressed. If I consistently do over 80 Ks a week, particularly if I'm not doing strength training, then I think that's when I put myself at a higher risk of injury. And particularly balancing, I've got 3 kids and a very busy job. So 80 Ks a week is probably my sweet spot. Those weeks where I'm doing 90, 100 Ks a week, which I have been for the block leading up into Sydney Marathon, but thankfully for not too long, that's when I start to feel a bit fatigued and like maybe it's just a bit too much.
Yeah, for sure. A topical one for me because I got sick last week in the lead up to the Sydney Marathon and decided to pull the pin on running myself. But how have you managed sickness when you've been running, and how has your body responded to that?
Yes, I wouldn't recommend trying this at home, but I have run through quite a few bouts of illness. I do think that running for me really helps me boost my immune system. And because it's so consistent, I think I stay quite healthy because of that. Having said that, I have run through, all the normal things, jet lag, hangovers. I've run through 2 bouts of COVID and, tried to do that. When I'm running through sort of a viral illness, I'll do that, at night and make sure that I'm away from people and all that sort of stuff. But just again, not trying to overdo it. I think you 100% did the responsible thing by your body, not trying to run on Sunday. I would never try to go out and push the pace or run really long distances when I'm unwell. So then if I'm battling something, it's just about getting the minimum 5Ks in and making sure that I do that in a way that's as responsible as possible.
And where do you run? Do you try and change that up all the time? I know personally I'm a pretty monotonous runner. I can go and run around Centennial Park every single day and I'd be totally comfortable with that, but that's not everyone. Where do you sit on that spectrum?
Yeah, I like to mix it up a little bit, but Centennial Park definitely is my home training ground. I also just love it. It's so beautiful. You can get out there really early in the morning when it's still dark. It's packed. It feels very safe. There's lots of cyclists. There's lots of runners. There's a lot of diversity in terms of the type of training you can do in Centennial Park. So you can get a 6.5K loop that feels like you're running on a trail. If you run on the outside track, if you run the actual outside on the footpaths, you get sort of closer to 7.5, 8. And then obviously you have the flat, around the white fence. Either you can run, on the dirt, or you can run on the footpath. And so, you just get a lot of diversity, and you can easily run a marathon in Centennial Park if you're just trying to get the Ks in. So, I think it's the best running track in the world.
Yeah, for sure. I keep it real boring and run mostly around the road and just do laps around there. But that's just me. I don't overcomplicate it sometimes.
I like being by the water as well. So I work down Rangaroo. There's a great runs along the foreshores, great runs around the Domain, obviously down at Bondi, and I often run commute as well. So I might run home from work or run to work. It gets a bit annoying carrying the backpack, but it's fine.
Yeah, for sure. And when throughout this journey did you kind of make that change into starting to do kind of more variable stuff and doing speed work and being able to incorporate, I guess, builds into different races and all that kind of stuff into this kind of broader challenge?
Yeah, so I would say in the lead up to UTA 2024. So I also love trail running. I haven't put 100K or a miler yet, but the 50K UTA or UTK have been the trail events that I've focused on. In 2024, when I was training for UTA, I was training with friends and they're much faster than I am. So I jumped on a bit of their training block, and that was really fun. But in a structured way for myself with my own dedicated plan, that's only been this year. So it's been since January this year that I've been working with my coach and really building up to some faster paces, and more of those speed sessions.
I imagine your coach loves you to some extent, because like the dream of every runner and running coach is having an athlete who is committed to this consistency, because ultimately for distance running, like, consistency is the only answer to getting good outcomes, and you're the definition of of consistency. Have you seen quite big improvements quite quickly because you already had this great base, you already had this consistency, your body knew what it was doing? So when you start kind of honing in and focusing on specific things to try and make you faster or stronger or whatnot, has that accelerated your running quite quickly?
It has, but I think the flip side to that, so yes, she's very complimentary. I think she wishes she could force me to have at least one rest day a week, because obviously the flip side to consistency is, a lot of getting better is on the rest days. So I say it jokingly, but I do sometimes feel like I'm getting in trouble if I do the easy days too hard. She really encourages me. I love the way she has it set up, which is that my runs get programmed in an app called, so my runs get programmed in an app that syncs to my Garmin. Then I can, when I just start the run on my Garmin, all the paces are there, all the intervals are there, don't have to think about it. And then when I sync my Garmin, that goes back to her. And then she sends me a loom every Monday morning, and she looks back on paces, she looks at heart rate, she looks at, and then she monitors that over time. So there's a, relatively scientific, and she's been really good at reminding me to do the easy days really easy. And I think that's enabled me to go a bit harder on the hard days.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool. All right, I want to maybe dive into the next level. So we've done the tactical stuff. Well, actually, this will be fine, I think. What has been the most difficult moment throughout this journey? Because we've already talked about illness and jet lag and hangovers and just a busy life.
Yeah.
What's been the point that's been the hardest to be like, God, do I really need to keep doing this, or is this a smart thing for me to be doing?
To be honest, the running itself hasn't been, it's been hard. I think but lots of ways I see it as a tool for me to navigate the other hard things that are happening in my life. So there's everyday things where it's absolutely not convenient, and my husband's incredibly supportive, my kids are very supportive, but it's absolutely not convenient for them. and it's absolutely not convenient for me. But I do see it as a privilege, and I really have tried to train myself to think of it as, that mindset of I get to run, not I have to run. So that's been a big mindset shift. There have been some really hard moments personally, loss and grieving someone really close to me last year. I think when I came, into the decision to start running for a purpose that was a bit greater than myself, that was probably the only time that I was really questioning why and should I keep going? Because as I said before, I'd already ticked off the personal accountability goals. And so I think, naturally, as someone who's quite motivated, I was then asking myself, well, if I've ticked off that goal, then should I be looking to train for 100, or should I be looking for another more kind of athletic goal beyond keeping the streak running? I think hard to train much harder and do much more volume than I have been doing if you're doing it every day. Because I think training for 100-kilometer trail race with all that elevation, quite difficult to get that volume of training in if you don't give your body a break. So, all of those things were in my mind. And that was probably the only time where I had sort of a mental, waiver, I suppose, because I felt like I had lost that sense of purpose for why I was doing it.
It can certainly be a challenge when even within running you decide to have other things you want to do, and you're like, does this actually enable that? Which is kind of a bit counterintuitive at the same time, isn't it? From an identity point of view, and the reason I want to ask about this is, I guess of late I've just either been listening to or spoken to other people who have been professional athletes, and their identity around their sport, when they leave their sport, it's a difficult thing to kind of move on from. And I guess the similarity here is, you obviously have another career and you do a lot of other things in your life, but when you start committing to something with this kind of level of focus, and it's something you do every day, it's that same kind of mindset to an extent of a lot of professional athletes that are doing this thing and this is who they are. Have you seen a shift in, I guess, how you see your identity? Has that been something that's been difficult? Talk to me a bit about that.
It has, but only in the most positive ways, because the commitment to showing up for myself has, running was the start of that, but it has enabled me to push forward in my career. It's enabled me to be stronger and more direct in the way I communicate with people. It's enabled me to have, I was talking to someone about it recently, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that I really feel like this last 3.5 years of running has enabled me to rebuild myself from the core with such a strong sense of who I am and my ability to overcome and push through hard things. It's not that I didn't feel that I could push through hard things before, but it's all about problem solving. It's all about, it really is. And I was at an event yesterday and was lucky enough to hear Kipchoge talking, and just the power of putting one foot in front of the other, such a simple action. You're not the person at the end of a run that you were when you set out on that run. And so for me, I'm still the same person, and the essence of me is still the same. But in so many ways, I'm not the same person I was when I started on this journey. I do have, obviously a big and busy job that keeps me entertained. I do think the day, inevitably the day will come where, either, when I reach the fundraising target, or, for some other reason, there will come a day when I won't run. And I'm sure that I will, grieve the end of the streak in the way that other people grieve the end of whatever their sort of sporting journey is. But, regardless, it's just, I still feel like that lesson of putting one foot in front of the other, the resilience and the leadership that you can build from doing that and problem solving along the way is something that I will definitely take with me forever.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about that piece of resilience you also dropped around the fundraising goal, so we'll get to that shortly as well. But the resilience is just this reoccurring thing, obviously, that comes up in this podcast, because it's just so relevant to all aspects of life and different levels of running. But how do you define resilience, and how is this challenge or process that you're going through shaped your resilience and changed it, or even changed your view of it?
So I guess there's a few different elements there. Obviously, from a physical perspective, I'm definitely far more resilient and have greater trust in my body than I did before I started this process. But really, it's about building that grit and that confidence in the ability to, as I said before, to persevere, to overcome, and to problem solve. And even when things get hard, to keep going. It really has been for me just a great lesson in putting one foot in front of the other. And the muscle that I'm really training now is my mind and the ability to keep pushing even when I don't want to, with an end sort of outcome in mind. And that for me is where the strong resilience has come in. Initially, there were a lot of lessons around personal accountability and that sort of sense of confidence that comes with committing to yourself and showing up. And increasingly, I'm thinking about this idea of type 2 fun. But it's a concept you're probably familiar with, but maybe not everyone will be. Obviously, there's the regular sort of fun, which is a type of fun that we all enjoy. Type 2 fun is learning to love the things that are really hard, even if they're not enjoyable in the moment, because of the response that they elicit within you and the growth that you experience as a result of that. So it's not things that are bad for you. It's things that are hard and perhaps unenjoyable in the moment, but that can be looked back upon really fondly because of the sort of end result. Running a marathon is a perfect example. Even if it's fun, there's definitely moments that it's hard, but we choose to do it. It's not something that's imposed, for most of us, it's not something that's imposed upon us. We choose to do it. And so we're really leaning into that type 2 fun. You definitely hear a lot of elite athletes like Courtney Dauwalter, the really well-known female trail runner. She talks a lot about the pain cave, and the moment she became a really elite athlete was the moment she learned to love that experience of going deep inside, especially when it really hurts and especially when it's really difficult, and just that internal exploration as something that she chooses as part of her running practice. So yeah, for me, the resilience has been firstly around overcoming those mental hurdles, and now really about leaning into that sort of type 2 fun and how I continue to train my mind by training my body.
Yeah, it's a fascinating piece, right? Because that pain cave analogy or piece that you talked about there really is the definition of someone who has built up resilience through doing hard things. Because the reason why amateur athletes or whatnot don't embrace pain is because you don't know if it's dangerous or not, right? It's actually good that you don't embrace pain as an amateur athlete or someone starting out or doing something, because it might actually be quite bad for you, right? You don't know where that limit is, and it's your body going, hold up, not sure if this is smart. Whereas when you're an elite athlete and you've experienced that, and you've over time gradually pushed that barrier, and you start to understand what is dangerous and what just hurts, it's really good to understand that. And that's resilience having been built over time, right? Because you now know where this threshold is, you know where that hard thing is, and you're able to now go, all right, I can sit in this zone and I know I'm going to get stronger because of it, or I know I've been able to get through it. But you've had to put all the work in beforehand to do that as well. Have you seen the ability in yourself to be able to, because you've built that kind of resilience through the running, and it's very easy to apply that from a running context, but have you seen that simply translate over into other areas of your life, whether it be work or whatnot? Has there been a bit of an adjustment phase to, or an understanding into those different areas? What's that been like?
100%. I think it's completely changed the way I show up, the way I take a longer term view on projects that I'm working on, my ability to deal with day-to-day frustrations, just seeing it as, a step in the right direction. Even if it feels like a backward step today, it's still a step in the right direction. My ability to stay calm and problem solve the majority of the time, like from a family perspective as well, the ability to sort of stay calm and problem solve. So yeah, it definitely has really strongly impacted and influenced. just going back to what you said before about how we experience pain, I'd definitely be interested in your thoughts on this. But I do think there's the physical pain that we experience in our bodies when we're doing hard things, and there are certain signs that you should not ignore. Obviously, if you're if you're really injured, you need to adapt to that. You can't just keep training at 100 miles an hour if you're not listening to those signs in your body. I think what's perhaps more interesting to me is this idea that our mind will tell us to stop going, even when it's only 20% to its capacity. That's definitely something that you witness with marathon runners and endurance runners, but particularly I think with these sort of grueling ultra marathons where I would say the vast majority of people in those runs don't look like you're, buff, young, muscular. These are people who know themselves, know their minds, and know their ability to endure, and have trained their minds to keep going, even when physically they, are probably not the archetype of someone who would go out and run 160 Ks. And so I think that that's what's so fascinating to me about it. And I think for those types of runners, a lot of that comes with maturity. Some people are lucky enough to have that level of innate maturity when they're young, but I think for a lot of people that comes with age and experience.
Yeah, for sure. I think it definitely there's both groups, right? I think there are some people who have this innate predisposition to just get that and they've got that mental side locked in from an early age, and props to them. and then there is, as you say, like the bulk probably of the population. This is probably a great example as to why most people, even at elite level, in fact, I was looking at the data today. Eliud Kipchoge ran, his PBs in the kind of 10K, and he never ran a particularly fast half, but he ran really, really fast times at, world-class level for that point of view about 10 years before he ran his PB in the marathon, right? Yeah. And a lot of that is a physical adaptation and getting good at moving that on, but it's also that ability to, in a 10,000 meter, it hurts, but, maybe it's the last 3K that really, really hurt, right? So for them, it's like 9 minutes or not even 9 minutes that they're having to suffer for. Whereas in a marathon, if it's the last, 10Ks, half an hour is a lot more than 10 minutes, right? And so that mental change. But interesting that you brought up that the physical difference thing, and it's something I have thought about. When you take special forces, so military special forces, often the people that are going into that, they're supremely fit and strong and all this kind of stuff, of course, but they're often not the strongest soldiers. They're not the most physically gifted. They're not the most, muscly and all this kind of stuff. It's just all in their head, right? The mental game that they have. And I think for them, most of them are probably predispositioned in that way as well. But also, generally, the ones that pass are more mature. Yeah. They're not that old, but very rarely do you see, 20, 21-year-old soldiers getting into special forces. They're more, late 20s, early 30s maybe even. And so again, that's that example of like you've built something over time to be able to enable you to be better at doing those hard things.
Yeah, you've earned it.
Yeah, you've earned it, right?
Yeah.
God, you better hope that, right? But after a marathon block, you've earned the ability to go and run a marathon, right? That's that's the short version of that anyway. Brilliant. I want to obviously get into what your purpose has changed into, right? Because I think you said you got 2 years in and you're like, right, we've ticked off that. I've kind of proved to myself that I can do this hard thing and I can commit to this. So tell me, why at that point did you decide, firstly, to keep running and find some kind of greater purpose to do it for? And then how did you land on what you've ultimately landed on?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of factors, but really just I was looking for a why. So I was looking for that next why. And I didn't want to stop running until I had made a conscious decision one way or the other. So I didn't want to just stop one day because I didn't feel like going for a run. I wanted to be really intentional about the way I approached either finishing the streak or why I was going to continue the streak. And I decided to run the Sydney Marathon, and I was able to get an entry transferred from someone else, quite close to the race. And he said to me, when we were having the conversation, I think he was worried. He had injured himself and he was worried about transferring the bib to someone else who potentially would also injure themselves because they hadn't done the training. And so we got into a conversation around, a bit of the backstory about why I was running and how much running I'd been doing. And, so that's how I found myself running the Sydney Marathon. But in that conversation, he asked me, well, what are you doing this for? What's your why? What's your purpose? Are you doing it for a charity? Are you just, doing it? We talked a lot about it, personal accountability. He's someone that I know a little bit better now, still not super well, but someone who I didn't know at all before that conversation. He was a friend of a friend. And the conversation just stuck with me. So it just, I guess it brought to the surface a lot of the things I'd already been thinking about. And it happened that, a few days later, I lined up at the Sydney Marathon. I wasn't planning to run for a time. I, wasn't looking for anything out of the day other than just, a great day and 42 Ks out, enjoying running with great people on the streets of Sydney. But I found myself, still kind of ruminating on this conversation as I was running. And around 25 kilometers, I sort of fixated on the shirt of this guy in front of me. And it was a predominantly yellow, red shirt. And it had the Indigenous Marathon Project on the back. And it was an Indigenous man wearing the shirt. And we were running sort of similar pace. And I found myself sort of coming back down Anzac Parade and going into Centennial Park following this person. And I fixated on the shirt, and I was thinking, why haven't I heard of this Indigenous Marathon Project, and who is this person? And I decided between that 20 sort of 9 Ks or whatever, when I lost Charlie and the finish line, I decided that I was going to cross the finish line and I was going to research what this organization was and what they were all about and who this man was. And if it was an organization that aligned with me and my values and my own reasons for running, that I would make a commitment to fundraise for that organization. So I did. That's exactly what I did. I crossed the finish line, whipped my phone out, started reading about the Indigenous Marathon Foundation and the Indigenous Marathon Project. And I learned that the man that I'd been running behind is a man called Charlie Ma, and he was the first graduate of the Indigenous Marathon Project. And that is the flagship program for an organization called the Indigenous Marathon Foundation. And everything about the work of the IMF is, so reflective of my own reasons for running. It was almost like it chose me, not me choosing it. It was a moment of serendipity, and I was in that mindset of being ready to make a decision. And, seeing Charlie and the learning about the Indigenous Marathon Foundation is what kickstarted my fundraising journey for them. It, at its heart is a charity that uses running to empower people. Obviously, running has been incredibly empowering for me personally. So to see the way that they empower young Indigenous leaders to build resilience and leadership skills through running just absolutely resonates with me. And I've been so grateful to not only learn a lot more about their work and meet and learn a lot more about our history and Indigenous Australia, but just be touched by, how many incredible young and incredibly inspiring Indigenous leaders there are out there, and how sport is a real tool to bring us together. I think we all want better outcomes for our First Nations people. And I think it's a way that's not political, that we can support each other. We can be out there when we're running, we're all the same. And the impact benefits of the Indigenous Marathon Foundation are absolutely incredible. And so, yeah, I could talk about that for hours, but it has been such a powerful experience for me, both meeting Charlie and having the opportunity to get to know the team and the young Indigenous leaders, but also to see the deep impact of their work. I'm super proud to be fundraising for them now and to be able to contribute to that work.
Yeah, they really are an awesome organization and doing great things. You know, obviously with Rob DiCostella as the kind of the founder behind it, and such an iconic name in running in Australia. It's awesome. But what I think is cool is, you know, so I think you're the third person now that I've spoken to in relation to this podcast, who's has some pretty strong connection, either working there or whatnot, with the Indigenous Marathon Foundation. And I think what is more astounding about that to me is none of you connect me to each other. So I've had 3 people who I've ended up talking to in this space who have independently been put in touch, or I've reached out to, or whatever it might be, around that foundation. And I think it just goes to show that, you know, okay, running is a bit of a small world to some extent in this country, but it just shows how pervasive they've gone across the running world in Australia, and the awesome work that they're doing that is touching a lot of different people, and the impact that it's having, obviously, from an Indigenous point of view, and the work that they're doing directly in those communities is awesome. But the buy-in that they've also got from Australians all over, and non-Australians even all across the country is really something pretty special. And I don't think many organisations get that kind of buy-in, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, their impact is amazing. And I think, you know, for many of us in Australia, we want to be part of giving back to, we want to be part of something positive, and we want to be able to have a positive impact on people's lives. And this is a really positive way for me to do that in a way that feels really authentic. You know, Rob is a great role model to all runners, obviously former Australian of the Year, marathon great. And IMF has been going for 15 years. They talk a lot about the ripple effect of starting something and then seeing how that ripples out. And really that's at the heart of what they do, and probably why they've been able to have such incredible impact. You have people who have gone through that program, through the Indigenous Marathon Project program. And, you know, I remember hearing Nadine Hunt, who was the first woman to graduate from the program, talking last year about her experience. She said when she first applied, she was she lacked the confidence to even finish the application on her own. From what I recall, she said someone actually submitted it for her, because she was you know, she had that self-doubt of actually even submitting the application. And, you know, when I met her last year, she, you know, she's an Iron Woman now. She's a mother of 1. She's about to finish at that time, she was about to finish a Masters of Public Health in Social Epidemiology. And she's a genuine powerhouse. She's an athletic coach now. And, you know, she talks about that year in the Indigenous Marathon Project as being, you know, a real catalyst for her, and in changing the trajectory of her professional life, the way she viewed herself. And, you know, those sort of stories like that are so incredible. And, you know, that's the power of running. That's the power of the programs that they run. And that's the sort of change that I want to contribute to.
It's pretty special. It's a very powerful story. When there's so many powerful stories. I've heard a few from others that I've spoken to about it. And yeah, I think it's just, they're doing amazing things. So if people are listening and they haven't come across the Indigenous Marathon Foundation before, go and have a look. Although, actually, tell me a bit more about what it is that you are now doing, and kind of what that purpose looks like for your running.
Yeah, so I've set myself a big fundraising target. I'm setting out to raise $1 million for the IMF, which will make a huge contribution to their programs. I'm doing that through sort of, you know, individual fundraising, but also increasingly looking to and starting to partner with corporates for donations. So, you know, shameless plug, if there's anyone who wants to collaborate on that, or if you're in a position to make a contribution, you know, either financial or otherwise, I'd absolutely love to hear from you. So yeah, it's a big fundraising goal, and I'm going to keep running 5Ks a day as long as I'm physically able until I do that. I have made a conscious decision to wind back the case for a little while now that the marathon's done, so that I can ramp up the fundraising. Otherwise, I'll probably, at this rate, still be running every day when I'm 150. But yeah, I mean, it's every dollar counts. And, I really feel like it's a privilege to be able to wear the IMF supporter singlet. It was great to be able to fundraise with them on Sunday. And I actually found myself in Centennial Park. I guess that was around kilometer 32. I had this incredible moment where I saw the singlet again, and I ran up behind Charlie. And this time he was, marathon, you always have a moment where you're in the hurt locker. I think at that moment he was like having a big moment, and we got a photo, and that was really nice. He actually finished he got his 7 stars on Sunday, and there were 2
Amazing.
IMP grads who also got their 7 stars. So yeah, the first 3 Indigenous Australians to complete all 7 majors on Sunday. So it was really special to be sort of a part of that in a small way, have a celebration with them afterwards, and give them a hug.
So cool. I think we could probably talk about that and things related to the marathon and all the positive vibes that came on that for hours, because it was really a special day. It was very cool.
Yeah.
But as we do kind of wrap up this conversation, we finish this off all the same way, and I want to get 3 pieces of advice from you. So what I would like is your top piece of advice on life, your top piece of advice on leadership, and of course your top piece of advice on running.
My top piece of advice on life, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Whether it's good or bad, it's always going to change. You've always just got to adapt. So just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I think that they would probably be my same 2 pieces of advice for leadership and also for running, which is, we're always going to have to tackle challenges, whether that be in business, whether that be in, leading teams, whether that be in running itself. And you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other in order to be able to overcome those obstacles. And whether that be tackling a new sort of professional challenge or whatever it might be, it's always one step at a time.
Yeah, that's cool. I like it. What have you got planned? You talked about focusing a bit more on the fundraising side of things. Is there anything in the pipeline that you want to talk about, or thoughts that you're having around what might be happening in that space?
Really, it's about doing more targeted relationship building and more targeted fundraising with corporates. And I guess another thing that I've learned is fundraising is really hard, and it's all about making sure that you connect with people in a way that resonates and is authentic to them. So I think it's really about focusing on the storytelling of the, IMP is one and the best known of the IMF's programs, but they have other really impactful programs that organizations can be a part of, whether that is their schools-based program. They have a running and walking groups program, and they also are in the process of launching a justice program to support Indigenous youth who are incarcerated. So yeah, really a lot of valuable work and a lot of storytelling to be done over the next few months and years.
Sounds like you're primed and ready to tackle it. And if you can take the same approach as you have into running, I'm sure you'll be perfectly fine. You've put the practice in place already,
That's
right?
the plan.
Yeah, amazing. Hey, well, thank you so much for coming on for a conversation today, Jess. It's really been a pleasure. I think awesome thing that you're doing, awesome story, awesome learnings within that. So it's been cool to unpack that a little bit. Hopefully listeners will have a look at it as well and maybe get involved in some way. Maybe they'll come and join you out for a run at some point. But no, yeah, really want to thank you for coming on.
I would love for people to come and join me for a run, and I think we're overdue to go for a run one of these days as well. So we'll make that happen, a few laps around Centennial Park.
We definitely are, yeah. Centennial Park, I'll be there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's definitely been really great to see how you're combining the stories of running and leadership. Obviously, I'm very biased, but there's such a strong intersection there, and it's been fascinating to hear such interesting people really explore where those 2 things meet.
Yeah, for sure. I'll keep doing it. It's good fun for me, so that's the main thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Execs Who Run. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And, better yet, share it with a friend or colleague who runs as well. You can find more stories and episodes at execswho.run.com or follow us along on Instagram or LinkedIn. Just search Execs Who Run. Also, you can join our Strava group to connect with other listeners on the run. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to bringing you the next conversation very soon.